All right, so let's begin with the first instructions for today. As I said earlier, open a browser, preferably Google Chrome, and type in this URL that you see on the screen, draw.io or https://app.diagrams.net. That should take you to this screen. If you did a practical last week, then I'm sure by now you should be familiar with this interface. Okay. Just before I continue, please can you confirm that you can see the screen by raising your hand? Okay. Thank you. All right. Thank you to those that raised your hand. Now let's continue with the rest of the instructions. So you've opened your browser and you've typed the following. Then remember, when you're copying the URL or typing it out, do not include the quotation marks. Okay, so it's draw.io. Okay, so in my case, I had selected OneDrive as my storage area for the files I'll be using or creating on this platform. So if it's your first time of visiting this platform, it may ask you to select a storage area. You can select or you can change the storage and select any of these places where you would like to save your diagrams to. By virtue of being UKZN students, you have a Microsoft account, and that Microsoft account includes an application called OneDrive. So you can select OneDrive, and when you're asked to sign in, you sign in using your student number and password, or your student email and password, which is for OneDrive. And I've selected OneDrive, and whatever diagram I'll be creating will be saved in my OneDrive folder. All right, so having done that, let's go to the next instruction. Click Create New Diagram option. Create New Diagram. So here I'm going to create new diagram. Okay, next. Name your file as sad_prac2_DFD. sad_prac2_DFD. All right. Then select the blank diagram option as shown below. So as you can see here, we'll have to select the blank diagram option as shown here. So let me go to the browser and select blank diagram. So the blank diagram has been selected, and then you click the create button. If it asks you if to use the root folder, you can select a new folder, or you can just click yes. So for the purpose of this practical, I am just going to click yes to use the root folder of the OneDrive without selecting a specific folder within the drive. So select yes, and as you can see, after selecting yes, then you should have the drawing pane. which is something similar to what we used last week. Okay, so the drawing pane is shown below, and the shapes for the context level DFDs will appear in the general section. Okay. Someone's asking to repeat where to find new diagrams. I don't get what you mean. Once you go to this website, you should see somewhere that says create new diagram. Okay, so just follow the instructions step by step. Make sure that you are not missing any step. Go to this URL, then you should see this interface here. So this is create new diagram. That's what you select, and it should give you an option to enter a new file name, and you select blank diagram and you select create. Let me know if that answers your question. Okay, so if you have selected that, you should have this showing here, which is the drawing pane, and on the left you see the general section. The general section is the section that contains the shapes that we'll be using for our data flow diagrams. If we remember last week, we selected the entity relation, okay, for the ERD that we were drawing. But for now, we're selecting the general. So we'll be using the shapes in the general section. Okay. So if you think the drawing area is too small, you can increase the size of the drawing area by zooming in or out. So if you come here, you can zoom in to 125% to make it bigger, or you can return it to 100%, or you can set a particular percentage of your choice. So for now, I will leave it at 100%. If there is a need to make it bigger, then I will make it bigger. Okay. Now we go on to the next instruction. Remember, to undo an action, you can use the Ctrl-Z shortcut or hotkeys. So you press the Ctrl button on the keyboard plus the Z key. So this would work most especially on laptops. But for smartphones, tap anywhere on the drawing pane and select the undo pop-up menu option. Okay. To make sure that you know where your DFD prac file that we're about to create is being stored, select the file menu item, then save as, and then you can change where the file is being saved if you need to. Okay, so if you want to be absolutely sure where your file is being saved, select file, save as, and then here you can select the storage where you want your file to be saved again. But already mine is already in the OneDrive, so I'll leave it at OneDrive. Okay, moving on. Remember, if you have questions, you can drop them in the chat section. Right, so moving on. Let's go to the page 5, or page 4 rather, of the practical document. Click on items you want to add to your drawing. Rounded rectangle for the system, square or rectangle for the external entity, and directional connector for the data flow arrows. So in the general section, let us identify the symbols, the items that we want to add to our drawing. Remember, in the data flow diagrams, we need, for the context level data flow diagrams, we need to have a process or a system, which is usually in the middle. We need to have external entities. It might be one, it might be more than one. And we need to have directional connectors. That's arrows that show the direction of flow or of information. Remember DFDs, which refer to data flow diagrams. They are used to show how data or information will be flowing in the system that you are designing or that you are about to create. So there needs to be a direction of flow. Is it coming from this entity to the system, or is it going from this system to that entity? So these symbols, we'll find them in the general section. So for the external entities, we will use any square or rectangle. For the system or process, we would use the rounded rectangle. And for the arrows or the directional connectors, we would use this. So let's see it below where we can find this. So in the general section, as you can see here, if you place your mouse on each of the symbols in that browser, you see the rounded rectangle. Here you see rectangle. Here you see square. So you can use any one for the external entity, depending on how big or small the content is. Then here you have the directional connector. You see, it only has one arrowhead, just one arrowhead to indicate direction in that path only, not this one, not this bidirectional, but this directional connector, just one direction. Okay. So now we've identified where to find these symbols. If you want to resize a process or an external entity, select the item with your mouse and drag one of the blue dots on the item's edges to resize it. Last week, I believe I showed you how to resize some of those shapes. So just click on the shape and drag them by the side to make them bigger or smaller or wider or taller or whatever the case is. Okay. To select many items at once, select items with your mouse while holding down the control key. So you can select multiple items. You first select the first one with the mouse, then you hold down the control key on the keyboard, and then you select all the other items. Okay, but if you want to select every item on the screen, you press the control key plus the A key together at the same time, or hold the two of them at the same time, and then it selects all the items on the drawing pane. Remember, this is a drawing pane that you have here. Okay. All right, to copy an item, which is on the drawing pane, select the item you want copied, drag them with your mouse while holding down the control key, and release where you want the copied items to be placed. Okay, so you select the item that you want copied, then you drag them with your mouse while you're holding down the control key, and as you're doing that, when you release the mouse, it's going to copy those items and place them at that point. To label an item, select it with your mouse or a finger on a smartphone and start typing the label. Okay. So we also tried this last week. For those that were not available, you can always check the video on Moodle. But obviously, since you're already here, it's something you can try today as well. So to label an item, select the item. If it's a rectangle or the rounded rectangle or the square, just click on the item and just start typing the label. Once you start typing, it's going to be automatically typing into that item. Okay. Now for your laptop, you select the item you want and you press F2 for edit, and then you type in the label. The F2 is one of those keys at the top of your keyboard. They are one of the function keys that you find at the very top of the keyboard, the very first line of the keyboard. Okay, so these are some of those things you may need to know while using this interface. All right, now to draw a context level data flow diagram, select a rounded rectangle, label it by selecting it with your mouse and start typing the label. Okay, so now we want to select a rounded rectangle. As shown on the screen, we want it to be selected, and the first thing we do is go to the browser, look for a rounded rectangle. As I said, you can select this and it appears on the drawing pane, or you can double click and hold on to it, then drag to the drawing pane. Whichever way you want, it would show your diagram on the drawing pane, your item on the drawing pane. So now I have selected the rounded rectangle. I want to give it a label called 0 dot University Module Registration System. So I'll start typing as, I'll just select this and start typing 0 dot enter module or University Module Registration. And now I can make this big. University Module Registration System. So, and that is what you have there. If you think this is too wide, you can reduce it by clicking on the item and then coming to the side and reducing the size. Okay, so, and then you can drag to any position on the drawing pane. Right, so that's the rounded rectangle. Very easy to do. Try that. Then, once we have selected this, we want to select a rectangle to get an external entity. Remember, this is a system or a process, starting with a 0 dot, then followed by the name of the system. Now we need to drag a rectangle. Actually, we need 2 rectangles. As shown here, we need 1 more rectangle to look like this. So let's try to create this on page 6. I need 3 rectangles and 1 rounded rectangle. Okay, I can decide to make this a bit bigger if I want, just to make it look more appealing. Okay. Okay, so now you have the rectangles on the left, on the right, and 1 below. Okay, so now we want to rename these rectangles, or want to give them the following labels. This one, the first one, should be labeled student. This should be labeled timetabling office. This should be labeled lecturer. Okay, so just click here, you type student. Click here, you type timetabling office. So remember, when you're labeling the external entities, they must take on the singular form. Singular, without the S. They must take on singular form. Even though you might be using them to refer to a lot of students, but it must be written on the diagram as student. Okay, just remember, like we were doing the ERD as well, when you're naming those entities, you name them as singular forms. Okay, so student, timetabling office, and lecturer. Now, select a directional connector for a data flow arrow. It will appear on the drawing pane. Select a directional connector for a data flow arrow. So we want the directional connectors to be between the external entities and the system. So let's start by selecting the data flow, the directional connector, which is here. Let me move this a little bit to the side. Okay. So here I select this, I drag. Remember last week also when we were selecting the arrows for the ERD, you put one edge to the side and it turns green, you drop, and then you drag the other edge until it touches and it becomes green, and then you drop. This tries to ensure that it is a straight, clean line. Okay, so you can keep adjusting that until you have a straight, clean line. So just take the edge, the tail or the edge of the arrow until you have something decent. Okay, so this might take you, especially if you're trying it for the first time, it might take you some time to practice. So just get familiar with how it's done, and then you start be able to produce the good shapes. But let's see what the instruction says about that. So drag the end of the arrow to the shape you want it to connect to and release when the connection spot becomes green. Label the arrow by selecting it and starting to type. To label the arrow, just select the arrow and just start typing on the keyboard. To force the label to span more than one line, position your cursor at the desired breakpoint and use the Enter key. So if you want your label to occupy maybe 2 lines or 3 lines, then at the end of the first line that you desire, you put the cursor there and press the Enter key, and then it goes to the next line. And then if you press the Enter key again, it goes to another line. Okay, so this is your arrow. Once you drag the arrow, it depends on the direction. You must know the direction of the arrow first. So if you want the arrow to point to the student direction from the system, then you move the arrowhead to the direction where you want it to go to, and you move the arrow tail to the direction where it's coming from. Okay, and then when it turns green on that on the shape, then you release it, and then you have your arrow. Okay, so in this case now we want a final position, we want a direction from student to the system, and then we want the label of the arrow or the data flow to be student number and module registration information. If you remember also from our last week's tutorial, then you remember that the naming of the flow is also important. You must use nouns or noun phrases. You must not use physical flows or verbs or commands or actions to name the labels or to name the flow between your entity and the system. Also remember, of course, that flows only happen from entity to the system or from the system to the entity in this context level DFD. Okay, so having been reminded of those rules, let us try to drag our first connector once again from student to system. So I come here, drag this, drop somewhere here, take the tail to the edge here and the head to the body here, and you have your arrow. Then you click on this arrow and then you start typing whatever it is you want to type. Okay, but in this case what we want to type is student number and module registration information. So that is what is being sent here. So you type student number and because of the state, you press enter, press module registration. If you want it to come down again, you press enter and you type info, and then you have something like this. just like we have here. Any questions? Let me check my chat section. Okay, this is not a question. Any questions? I want to believe that I'm trying to I'm repeating myself sometimes because I want you, I'm assuming that you're trying this out as I'm saying it. Okay. I hope you're trying it out as I am showing it on the screen. And for those that have used this website before, like for example, last week, then I believe you should be familiar with how to do or how to drag items to the screen, how to label items, because that's what we've just done so far. We've just dragged items to the screen and then we have, tried to label them. That's all we've done. So I don't think we've done too much for you to catch up, but if you have any questions, you can drop them. Then I will attend to them when I am able to do so. Okay, so if there are no questions, now let's move on to page 7. So we have labeled the arrow as student number and module registration information or info. So that is the data that is being sent to the system by the student. Okay, or by a student in this system. Now, page 7 says to bend an arrow. To bend an arrow, select the arrow, then select its midpoint and drag that down or up. Then drag the point at the 1/4 and 3/4 way along the arrow length and drag down or up. Okay, so the first thing is select the arrow. So sometimes you may need to bend an arrow because there are just so many flows or arrows. So you don't want to squeeze everything in between the entity and the system, but you want some to come down here. So sometimes you may need to bend an arrow to look like this, just to create space, to make it neater and things like that. Okay, so now to do that, select that arrow that you've created, select the midpoint and drag that midpoint down or drag it up, and we'll see the difference between the two now. Okay, so select the arrow, the midpoint is somewhere here in the middle. Okay, drag that down or up. In this case I'm dragging up. Okay, and then let's go back to the instruction. Once you drag that down or up, then drag the point at the 1/4 and 3/4 way along the arrow length. Drag the point at the 1/4 and 3/4 way along the arrow length. Okay, so from here you bend the midpoint, then here at this stage you bend 1/4 way point, and then here you bend 3/4 way point, and then here you have the final arrow. Okay, so let's try this. Let me try to, instead of going up, let me come down. So drag this down, then bend the 1/4 way point, Okay, once again, I hope as I'm trying to do this, you're also trying it on your side as well. Because when the video is uploaded, then it will be difficult to ask questions or, you know, yeah. So the best time is to make use of this live session to ensure that you're following what is being done. So, and if you have issues, which is very normal, then feel free to just ask questions. I see some questions in the chat section. It is harder to do with an arrow that already has text. Okay. Thank you for that hint. What's the name? Kosikona. So Kosikona suggests that when you're trying to do this, do not put text, so because it feels it's harder to do when you already have text within the that arrow. Okay, so in my case, I already have text, so that might be why it looks a little bit complicated, but I still managed to finish it. But yeah, it maybe wastes more time. So try to do that without having much text. So let me try this just as an example with no text in the arrow. Well, from my own observation, it didn't take me lesser time, whether it's had text or without text. So I think it all depends on your artistic skills here. Okay. But anyway, whether it has text or no text, just try to make the arrow curved, just like you see here on the screen. Okay. So at the end, the aim is to make sure that the arrow is bent or curved in a certain way that still shows the direction. All right. For laptop users, sometimes it is easier to copy an arrow that already has the shape you want rather than recreating it. So if you already have an arrow like this and you want to use it again, something similar in another within another flow, you just copy. So in my case, I use Ctrl+C to copy, or you can right click and you click copy. Then you come here, you right click, you say paste here, and you see it recreates that arrow for you, and then you can decide to do whatever you want with the arrow. Okay, in this case here. So if this is the same arrow that you want to use somewhere later, maybe here. Okay, I'm going to move the image. Okay, so here, for example, now you can easily do what? Just reuse that arrow if that's what you want. But in this case here, I'm not going to be reusing this arrow, but I'm just giving an example. So yeah, in this case, let me move this. Yeah, so it saves you more time because something like that arrow already exists. So you don't need to recreate and redrag every time. So you can easily just copy and paste if it already exists. So that's what that information is saying. Okay, so that's just some of the exercises you may need to do, learning how to bend the arrows. Sometimes you would need to do that to bend the arrows, so it is important to learn how to do that. Okay, then let me delete this because this was just an example. Let's go on to the next instruction. So the next thing is exercise 1. We are expected to draw the following data flow diagram shown below, which represents a university's module registration system. When a student registers for a module, the system gives a module registration confirmation message, which you can see here. So when the student registers for a module, the information sent is student number and module registration information. And the system replies with what? A registration confirmation. As you can see the direction of the arrow, right? Okay, so that's where we are. The system gives a module registration confirmation message. The timetabling office is sent the class size and allocates the module's classes to days, times, and venues, just like you have in your timetable. So the system sends the timetable office the following information: class size, and the class size is what is used to allocate the modules classes. So what classes, the classes that the modules would need, and the days and the times and the venues, all that information is sent in the timetable. Okay, then the system makes the timetable available to the student. So when the system sends the class size, then the timetabling office uses that information to create a class timetable, and the class timetable information is sent to the system. Now the system has the class timetable information, and then the system now sends the class timetable information to the lecturer. So the lecturer knows the class timetable. The system also sends the class list, the list of students in the class, to the lecturer. Okay, this all comes from the information obtained from all students that registered. Okay, as you can see here, the system also sends the class timetable to the student as well. Okay, so this is what's going on in the data flow diagram. So our job now is to recreate this diagram. Very easy. Just recreate whatever you have here. So already in our website, we already have a system or process in the middle here, right? We already have, so let me just delete this. So we start afresh. Let me give this more space here. Okay, so here the first thing we want is student to university module registration system. There is a directional connector from student to the system. So that one is named student number and module registration information. So you come here to the general, you select directional connector, you drag or you double click to drag and you drop here. Then you connect this to the edge and this to the edge and you drop. I always like the arrows to be straight, but sometimes it might be difficult for you to get it straight. But as long as the edges of the arrows are touching the items, then that's fine. Okay. But also your work needs to be neat, so don't forget that. So here the information we need is what? Student number and module registration information. student number and enter module registration info. Okay, so now from the system back to the student, we have registration confirmation. I'm sure you can see that it's a bent arrow, but if you like, also make it a straight arrow. It doesn't make it wrong. Okay, so but here is just to show you how you can use the bent arrows in a way that looks nice, because if you, the way it is drawn here, if you try to make an arrow here and you type the label, it's gonna be squashed together. It's gonna be there won't be a lot of space. It won't be neat. So that's why the bent arrow here gives it more space. Like there's like more space here for you to be able to see the next label. So in my own case, I can decide to use a bent arrow, but because I also have a big space, I can also decide to create an arrow here. So let's see if I will have enough space to do that. Okay, let's see. So this is registration confirmation. As you can see, I am able to place both arrows parallel without having to bend one of them. That's because of the space I created between my items. So it all depends on how you have arranged your items in a way that is neat. So the idea of using the bent arrows is to make sure that your flows are arranged neatly. That's all. It is not a must that you use bent arrows, but use them when they are absolutely needed to show the direction. You see, everything is clearly written, no confusion. But now you can see it's going to be difficult for me to add another flow without having to use a bent arrow between the student and the system. Okay, so for the next flow from the system to the student, it is called class timetable. Class timetable. So let's create this flow from the system to the student. The system sends class timetable to the student. So you come here, it's coming from the system to the student. In this case, we need to make it curved. And there you have it. Looks too big, but let's see if it's going to affect anything else. Okay, yeah, it shouldn't affect anything else, so I will leave it like that. Okay, so this now is class timetable. Class timetable, and there you have it. Okay, class timetable. So we have created the flows between the student and the system. I'm trying to see, let me try to move this up a bit. Okay, so I've just tried to reduce the height of that. That has been done perfectly. Now I can move this, I can leave this as it is. Yeah, so any questions so far? As I said, what we've done so far is just expanding, relabeling, reshaping, dragging, dropping. I think the most important thing you should be worried about is creating the data flow diagram. How do you know how to name the entities? How do you know how to name the system? How do you know how to give the correct keywords for the flow, the information about the flow? Those are the things that you should really be worried about. Dragging and dropping, I'm sure you will get all these things when you start practicing with this on this website or using any platform, whether it's Microsoft Visual or Draw.io, which is what we're currently using. Okay, so you would get the hang of it when you start making use of this more often, but you must understand how the flows are named, why they are named like that, the direction of the flow, the correct keywords to use for the flow, yeah, and things like that. So let's continue with our data flow diagram. So now I need two arrows between the system and the timetabling office. One arrow is the class size, the other arrow is the class timetable. So the class size is sent by the system to the timetabling office, and the class timetable is sent the other direction, which is from the office back to the system. Okay, so this one direction, and then the other direction is the class timetable. There you go. So this is class timetable, and this is class size. Okay, precise and neat, right? Remember, you can always change the if you want to change the size of the label, you can always do that. If you think it's too small, you can always increase the size of the text by making it bigger. Okay, so it's at 11 points. Let me try to increase it to the 14 points. Let me increase this to 14 points as well. This one, I think if it gets too big, it's gonna okay, that's fine. If it gets too big, it's gonna cover the other one, so I'm just gonna leave it at 12 points. I'll leave everything at 12 points just for consistency. Okay, so now we have class size, class timetable. Now within the system and the lecturer, we need some arrows. We need two arrows coming from the system to the lecturer. The first one is class list, the second one is class timetable. So you come here, you create two arrows. First one, class list, but we need to move this a little bit. Yeah, okay. And then I can just duplicate this arrow because I need something similar. So I've just used the shortcut keys to duplicate that. That's Control plus C, Control C and Control V. Control C is the control key plus the C key. That's the copy. And then you paste using the control key and the V key. Control V. Okay. So let me put some more space here. Okay. Then let me give this more space as well. So these are the two arrows. One of the arrows is class list, the other one is class timetable. So I'm just going to write class list. I can press enter here so that it does not stretch too much. Class list and class timetable. There you go. And our data flow diagram is complete. Okay. It always saves after every change, but just you can always save it manually so you don't forget as well. Any questions so far? So we have completed exercise 1 of this practical session. We have completed exercise 1. Any questions? Any questions, guys? The chat section is open. The microphone can be opened by you as well. Okay, no questions. No one is saying anything. So I assume that there is no question. All is well and good. Okay, so let's do exercise 2. Remember, we've been working on one page. So I'm just going to rename this page to exercise 1. I showed you how to do that last week. Just click here, double click on it, and then you rename this to exercise. Rename. Then you click on this plus icon, and then it's named page 2, but I want to rename it to exercise 2. So I double click on this and type exercise 2. This is to make sure that your diagrams are on different pages, on different pages, so you don't put all the diagrams on the same page. So in this second diagram, I'm just going to be a bit much faster because we are just redrawing a DFD, okay? So I don't want to be repeating the things I've already said, but I will just be drawing them again, but something different. So here, this DFD describes a vending machine which sells soft drinks, okay? A vending machine which sells soft drinks. So we want to recreate this this diagram that you see on the screen. As you can see, there seems to be a lot of arrows here. So we cannot squeeze all the arrows between this area. So that is why it is highly needed for you to know how to use the bent arrows, how to bend the arrows to create more space above, as you can see here on the screen. So that is why it is important to learn how to, create those bending arrows. All right. So first thing is we have to draw we have to place our items on the screen. So this is the diagram, and this is our website that we want to use for that. So let me increase this to 125%. So can I ask, just to be sure that you're following me, how many external entities can you see on the screen now? In this diagram, how many external entities do we need to create? How many external entities do we need to create? Surprise, Tandazani, and Glovu, thank you for your contributions. One external entity. One external entity, and that is the customer. Remember, the system is, the process is not an external entity. This is the system, soft drinks sales system. So to do this, we need one rounded rectangle, and we need one rectangle. So one of them is the external entity, and the other one is the system or the process. Well, you may want to be smart here. It wouldn't be wrong. You might want to make your external your process so big and the external entity is so big also that you want to make sure that all the arrows, fit in without having to create bent arrows. As I said earlier, that will not be wrong, as much as it does not make your work or your diagram look rough. If it makes it look rough, then it is advisable to just use the bent arrows. So here now you can assume that I can probably create like 3 or 4 arrows in between these two items, right? You can assume that three or 4 arrows will fit somewhere here, right? Yeah, it should fit. But again, learn how to create the bent arrows. It will be very helpful. Okay, instead of having to always try to play smart out of every situation, just try to learn that skill so that when it's actually needed and you can't avoid it, then you will use it. But again, if you do it this way, it will not be wrong. The most important thing is to make sure that the arrows are going in the right direction, the labels are correctly done, and the entities are correctly uh, uh, labeled, and the information about the flow is written in the correct grammar. Okay, that's the most important thing. Okay, and of course, equally important is also the neatness of your diagram. It has to be neat. The arrows have to touch the edges of the items. Okay, so in this case, we need 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 arrows. So there is absolutely no way I'm going to fit in 6 arrows between these items. So whether I like it or not, I still have to make use of bent arrows at some point. So I'm just gonna stop trying to be too smart and do it the other way. So we need 3 arrows at least in between them, and then the other arrows can be bent arrows. So let's try to create this. So this would be a customer, and okay, this should be customer, and this should be the system starting with 0 dot, press enter, soft drinks sales system, and then from the customer to the soft drink sales system, you have soft drink choice, and you have payment. So soft drink choice and payment, those are the only 2 flows from the customer to the system. Soft drink choice and payment. So let me make this the soft drink choice. Okay. Okay, so this is soft drink choice. I'm just gonna duplicate this because I want to move it up here, and I'm gonna make this come here. Drag this here. Okay, there you go. Soft drink choice. So soft drinks choice, I have to change that to payment. I'll change this to payment. There you go. So soft drink choice and payment, moving from the customer to the soft drink sales system. And then from the soft drink sales system back to the customer, we have the following flows. Message which says out of stock is sent to the customer. Another message which says check price list is sent to the customer. Another message which says exact change given is sent to the customer. And of course, price list is also sent to the customer. So 4 things are sent to the customer here. So we need 4 flows going from the system to the customer. So let's have our 4 arrows ready. So let's change the direction of this. This should be going here, coming from here. This should be going here, coming from here. And let me put this down. Then let me duplicate this because I need another one going from here, coming here. This should come down here. Okay, let's just make this straight. There you go. Then I need one on top. I need one on top in the other direction. So, okay, let me duplicate one of this. Drag it up. Then you can pull this out as I've explained to you earlier today. Then pull this somewhere here, drag here. Let's pull this here as well and drag here. All these things are quite easy to do, guys. Very easy once you start doing it yourself. You just need to keep arranging it in a shape until you can see for yourself that it is neat. Then you can stop dragging and dropping. Okay, there you go. Looks better now. So now I can label the arrows. So the first one is message out of stock. So message that says out of stock. Another one is message that says check price list. Now you see here, it says check price list, but it is in form of a message. So what is sent here is a message. So this can be another way of labeling your arrows. Okay, when you say message colon check price list, it means what is being sent is a message. So the content of that message is a different thing entirely. So if you write it this way, it is fine. It can be a message, it can be an email, it can be SMS, it can be whatever. But it is saying whatever is sent here is a message. Okay, so message is a noun. Okay, message is a noun. Message is a noun. So check price list is just the content of the message itself. So it is not commanding the customer to check price list, but it is sending a message. So within that message, the content is called, the content is check price list. Okay, so then another message says exact change given. Message, exact change given. And then, and the last one is price list. It sends price list. Okay, so now we have labeled all the flows between the customer and the system, and we should have something like this that you see on the screen. Any questions? So we have completed exercise 2. Any questions? Any queries? Any comments? Any suggestions? Any requests? So the same thing again will be repeated in exercise 3 and in exercise 4 and in exercise 5. It's just recreating these diagrams that you see. There is absolutely nothing different. The only thing you should be familiar with is the actual scenarios in those diagrams. As I said earlier, that is the most important thing you should know. Drawing the diagrams is not going to take you a lot of time to understand, but then understanding how a scenario can be converted into a diagram is the absolutely most important thing that you must learn from this practical. I hope we're together. If you still have questions, remember to drop them in the chat section. Then we'll do one other exercise. Then the exercise 3 says, using the steps to create a DFD, create the following DFD on a new page, figure 3. So I'm going to want to create figure 3. So I'm just going to rename, I will create a new exercise and call it exercise 3, and then say rename. Now I have a new drawing pen for exercise 3. Now, what's happening here? This diagram describes a fast food ordering system. Fast food ordering system. So what happens here? The customer places her order and the server tells her the amount due. The server in this case is the person serving the food. The server here does not refer to a computer server. Okay, this refers to a human being serving the food. So when the customer places the order and the server tells the customer the amount that is due. And remember, the system here is what the server is working with. So the server is said to be part of the system. That is why you cannot see anywhere on this DFD that shows an external entity for the server, because the server is said to be someone assisting with the system. So they are considered to be part of this system. All right. So even though the server interacts with the system, then tells the customer the amount due, then it doesn't mean you must include that in the DFD. So when the customer is told the amount, then the customer makes a payment and receives a receipt. So the customer makes an order, sends that information to the system is checked, and then the amount due is sent back to the customer. All right. Now the customer knows the amount due. The customer responds by paying. So sends payment information back to the system, and then the system, is now going to do what? Send a receipt to the customer. And that is the end of the flow between the customer and the system. However, every day the manager gets a sales report. Every day the manager gets a sales report from the system. So in this case, the manager is an example of a decision maker. So decision-making authorities must be represented in the DFD. Those assisting with the system, like the receptionist, the clerk, the computer operator, the shop assistant, the librarian, the petrol attendant, the secretary, whatever you can think of as those are assisting with the system, they do not need to be represented in the DFD because they are not actual decision makers. The people making decisions here in this system are the customer coming to buy something, who determines the order and the amount and everything, and the manager who is running the shop. Those are the guys making decisions in this system. So that's why only the two of them are being shown as external entities. So every day the manager gets a sales report from the system, and that's where you can see daily sales reports sent to the manager from the system. All right. From time to time, he, which is the manager here, I presume, reviews the existing price list. From time to time, he checks. This item used to be 20 rands. Let's increase it to 21 rands, or let's reduce it to 19 rands. He reviews the existing price list and updates the price of items sold. He updates the price of items sold, like maybe specials. So in this case, from the system to the manager, so the manager gets existing price list from the system. That's why that information is sent from the system to the manager. He gets it from the system. Okay. And then when he updates the price list, he sends that updated price list to the system. Okay. So that is why the flow has been like this. So now we want to draw this diagram. We need two external entities and one system. So first thing there is to place the following items on the middle, two external entities. Okay, starting with the system. This is our system or process here. And then we have an external entity called customer and another one here called manager. So this is manager, this is customer, and this is the fast food processing system. Okay, let me check if I got the name correctly. Fast food ordering system. Okay, ordering. Okay, now we have the items. We can now create the flows between them. So I can make this a bit bigger. This can also be bigger so that the arrows can touch the edges. So from the customer to the system, we have customer order. We have customer order going here, coming from here. Sometime also we'll have payment coming from the customer. So I call this payment. Call this customer order, or you can just say order. But in this case, you don't want it to sound like a verb. Okay, so you can say customer order, that's fine. Then amount due comes from the system to the customer. Amount due comes from the system to the customer. So you can say amount due. You can just bring this down a bit. There you go. What else? Receipt goes from the system to the customer. We need an arrow from the system to the customer, but it has to be a bent arrow. So we'll have to bend this in a way. There you go. And this is receipt. Okay, so we're done with that flow. Now we go to the other one. Daily sales reports and existing price list are sent to the manager. Daily sales report and existing price list. Okay, daily sales report, existing price list sent to the manager. Let's give this more space. More space here. Okay, so this can go up. So this daily sales report, and this is existing price list. And then from the manager to the system, he sends updated price list. So you change this name to updated price list. So the updated price list is sent from the manager to the system, and our DFD is complete. And don't forget to save. Our DFD is complete. Okay, so same process applies for exercise 4 and exercise 5. I want you to complete those parts, but then the second part that will show that you now really understand what's going on is where you would have to develop a correctly labeled context level DFD for this scenario. Develop a correctly labeled context level data flow diagram for this scenario. So our company sells high quality computer parts. When customers place orders on the online system, the system checks to see if the parts are in stock. The system sends the customer a message saying that the parts aren't available, or sends the customer an order confirmation message. The system tells the customer the amount due, and the customer makes a payment for the order. The system then sends a shipping order to the warehouse, which fills the order and sends a confirmation to the system that the order has been shipped, posted, or delivered to the customer. On receipt of the shipping confirmation, the system sends the customer an email stating that the order has been shipped. Develop a correctly labeled context level data flow diagram for this scenario. So I am on page 12 of the practical document. So can I ask that based on this scenario, can anyone identify? Obviously, we know there must be a system. So I'm just going to create somewhere called part B. Part B. Part B question. Part B question 1. So we know there must be a system in the middle somewhere here. So the next question I want to ask is, how many external entities, or what are the external entities that you can identify from this scenario? I need contributions now. Chandazani, customer, thank you. One of the key decision makers in the system. Customer has to be there. So we put an external entity for customer somewhere there. Anyone else? What other things can you identify from this scenario? Okay, Leisha says warehouse. Okay. Okay. Glove says shipping ordering system. Nandumiso says warehouse as well. Okay. Keep them coming. If you have more, should I call them suggestions, keep them coming. Let's be sure that we are on the same page. So Tandazani, Leisha, and Glovu, and Nandumiso have all contributed. Customer, warehouse, shipping ordering system, and warehouse. Okay, so as I said, the system is absolutely going to be there. So that shouldn't be anything new. So the customer definitely must, the system must be in the middle, and we've identified that. So what we need to identify now are the external entities, and the people that contributed have correctly shown or stated the things that must be present in that diagram, which is the customer and the warehouse. Okay, so one entity here for customer and the other entity here for warehouse. Okay, so someone gave the system a name. Let me check. Okay, and Glovo says shipping ordering system. Okay, that's a name suggested. Does anyone have another suggestion for the name of the system? Remember, the name of the system must be very specific. Okay, let's check. Our company sells high quality computer parts. Our company sells high quality computer parts. When customers place orders on the online system, the system checks to see if the parts are in stock. So the system here belongs to this company that sells high quality computer parts. Okay, let me check. Nogwando says computer parts ordering system. Okay, that's more specific. Glovo's example did not give what exactly the system is talking about, but here it's an ordering system for computer parts. So that's Nogwanda's example is adding on to that. Thank you. Okay, and you can decide to add the keyword online as well. Okay, you can decide to add the keyword online, but I'm just going to use, so start with 0, don't forget, dot, press enter, computer parts, let's say online ordering system. Okay, thank you. Now we have the name. Now this one is a customer, and this is a warehouse. So let's talk about the flow between these entities and the system now. So here our company sells, okay, when customers place orders on the online system checks to see if the parts are in stock. So we know at some point that customers need to place orders. So we say customer order is one of those flows that will happen here. Customer order is sent to the system, and when it is sent, the system checks to see if it's available. The system sends the customer a message saying that the parts aren't available, or sends the customer an order confirmation message. Okay, so in this case, one of two things could happen. It's either a message saying the parts are unavailable, or the message saying the order has been confirmed. So the order confirmation can only come when the parts are available. But if the parts are not available, then we cannot have an order confirmation. So let us represent the two possibilities. Yeah, so here a flow coming from the system to the customer saying that okay, I think we might need more space for this, so let's take this up here because of the text we're going to type. So here we say, in the case of the parts not available, a message is sent from the system to the customer saying, let's say a message saying talking about the availability or the unavailability of the parts. Okay, let's just use a noun phrase that says, message saying parts unavailability. Parts, or you say unavailability of parts. That's the message sent in the case where it is not available. But if it's available, then there should be an order confirmation sent to the customer. So this one will be called order confirmation. That's confirmation of the order. Okay, order confirmation is sent to the customer. Let's go on. The system tells the customer the amount due, and the customer makes a payment for the order. That's straightforward. The system tells the customer, okay, let me just duplicate this, copy and paste. Let's call this amount due. And then the customer does what? The customer pays. So from the customer to the system, we want to establish a payment. From the customer to the system. Okay. Let's try to reduce this. Okay, so payment happens here from the customer to the system, and the system sends a shipping order to the warehouse. The system sends a shipping order to the warehouse. So this is the system sending a shipping order. Luckily, the name has been written in a noun phrase, so you don't need to worry about how to name that. So shipping order is good enough to name such, because that's a noun phrase. It's not a verb or action, or it's not a physical flow. So this is shipping order, contains information about what is going to be shipped. Okay, sends it to the warehouse, and the warehouse fills the order and sends a confirmation to the system that the order has been shipped to the customer. Sends a confirmation to the system that the order has been shipped to the customer. So this is coming from the warehouse back to the system. So we can call this shipping confirmation. Okay, let's just jot this down. Okay, and then at this point, I don't think we've left anything out. I don't think we've left anything out, but you can look through. Okay, no, I think we're not done yet. So the warehouse sends a confirmation to the system that the order has been shipped. On receipt of the shipping confirmation, that's when the system receives the shipping confirmation, the system sends the customer an email stating that the order has been shipped. So the system sends an email to the customer stating that the order has been shipped. Okay, so here we still need to have a flow from the system to the customer stating that the order has been shipped. So this is an email. So let's drag this somewhere down here and say email. Okay, so it's a system to customer thing. Let's call this shipping confirmation email. Yeah, now I think we have completed the flows. Thank you, Nogwanda. Email to the customer has been added to the diagram. And we have our data flow diagram for instruction number 1 for part B. We have completed this part. So we're going to stop here for today. I want you to try to complete this number 2 for part B on your side, and make sure that you know check with someone to see that it is correct. You can also send to my email if you want to confirm if it's correct. And I'm just going to drop my email once again in the chat section, just in case you've forgotten. It's funnelb@ukzn.ac.za. Any questions before we leave? If there are questions, please drop them in the chat section. If not, please drop your student numbers and the campus that you belong to. And thanks for attending today. We shall meet again some other time.